What if I told you that even in a locked cell, a person can be freer than someone walking under an open sky? That the real chains are not made of iron, but forged silently in the mind, in our fears, our doubts, and our surrender to circumstance. We speak of freedom as if it's given or taken, as if it lives outside of us. But the most profound kind of freedom, the one that no force on earth can strip away, is the freedom to choose who we are. The freedom to rise even when everything around us falls. This is not the freedom of the body. It is the quiet, unshakable freedom of the soul. And it begins the moment you realize no one can imprison your will unless you hand them the key. The power of response is one of the most profound aspects of human experience. It refers to the inherent ability every individual has to choose how they will react to any given situation. While the external world, with its unpredictable events, is beyond our control, how we respond to those events is something that remains firmly within our grasp. This distinction is crucial because it reveals that although we cannot dictate what happens to us, we have the power to shape how we internalize and react to those circumstances. In any given moment, life presents us with countless opportunities to choose our response. Consider an instance when something unexpected happens, perhaps an argument, a loss, or even a minor inconvenience. In these situations, we are often swept up in emotions and automatic reactions. But it's important to remember that there is a pause, however brief, between the event and our reaction. Choosing our response requires awareness and mindfulness. It is not always easy, especially when emotions are running high. The instinctual response might be anger, fear, frustration, or helplessness. But through practice and awareness, we can choose a different path. We can choose patience, understanding, or even silence. This shift in response can completely alter the course of our interactions and, by extension, our lives. The power of response isn't just about reacting to external events. It's about how we relate to our inner world as well. Our thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations play a huge role in shaping our experience. When something happens that challenges us, we might immediately interpret it as a setback or a failure. But in reality, we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth, a lesson in resilience, or a call for self. By reframing our perspective, we empower ourselves to take control of how we experience life. Furthermore, this power of response extends to the way we handle suffering. Pain and hardship are unavoidable in life, but suffering is often a result of how we respond to those challenges. Two people might experience the same difficulty, yet their reactions can be vastly different. One person might allow the event to overwhelm them, becoming bitter, hopeless, or passive. The other might face it with determination, seeking meaning and growth in the process. This choice of how to respond in the face of adversity often determines not just the outcome, but the quality of life itself. In essence, the power of response is a reminder that no matter what happens around us, we retain the ability to direct our internal narrative. We can't always control the external world, but we can always control how we engage with it. This freedom, this power to choose our response, allows us to live with purpose and authenticity, no matter the circumstances we encounter. The relationship between the external world and the inner world is central to understanding how we experience life. The external world refers to everything that happens outside of us, events, situations, the actions of others, the environments, and all the things we cannot control. The inner world, on the other hand, is our thoughts, emotions, beliefs, attitudes, and perceptions. It is the private realm where we process what we encounter and decide how to interpret and react to it. This distinction is essential because it highlights the fundamental truth that while we cannot always control the external world, we have full autonomy over our inner world. The external world can be chaotic, unpredictable, and even harsh at times. We encounter challenges, obstacles, and disappointments that are often beyond our influence. A person might lose a job, face betrayal, experience illness, or live through a crisis. All things that disrupt the rhythm of life. These events happen independently of our wishes or desires, and they can create feelings of helplessness or frustration. However, the key insight is that while we cannot dictate what happens to us, we can choose how we respond to what happens. Our inner world, in contrast, is entirely shaped by how we engage with these external events. We cannot control the person who cuts us off in traffic, the boss who reprimands us, or the unfortunate circumstance that befalls us. However, we have the power to determine how we interpret and emotionally react to these things. If we allow the external world to dictate our inner emotional state, we become victims of our circumstances. But if we learn to govern our inner world, we retain our freedom and peace, no matter how tumultuous the external world becomes. This interplay between the outer and inner worlds can be seen most clearly in times of adversity. When faced with suffering or pain, it's easy to let the outer event define our emotional landscape. We might become angry, anxious, or defeated, assuming that the external event has the final say over how we feel. But it is at these moments, particularly when we face hardship, that the power of the inner world becomes most evident. The way we choose to process and frame an event can change its impact on our emotional state. For instance, a loss can be seen as a devastating end, or it can be viewed as an opportunity to rebuild, learn, and grow. Our inner world is shaped by our perceptions and beliefs, and these in turn shape how we experience the world. For example, someone with a negative outlook might view the same event as another proof of their misfortune. In contrast, someone with a more positive or resilient outlook might interpret the same event as a temporary setback, something to overcome. The external world provides the raw material. In addition, the external world is constantly changing. We cannot predict what will happen tomorrow, nor can we control the behavior of others or the events that unfold. This uncertainty can be unsettling, especially for those who seek security or control over their surroundings. However, the inner world offers a different kind of stability. It is rooted in our capacity for reflection, awareness, and choice. By understanding that we have dominion over our thoughts and attitudes, we can navigate the fluctuations of the external world with greater resilience and composure. When the outer world is unstable, our inner world can be a source of strength, providing us with a sense of purpose, clarity, and peace that is impervious to external turmoil. The external world often presents us with challenges that test our resilience. But the way we respond to these challenges is what ultimately defines our experience. If we focus solely on the external world and try to control everything around us, we will constantly feel at the mercy of forces beyond our control. But by acknowledging the power we have over our inner world, our thoughts, our emotions, and our attitudes, we gain the freedom to live with intention, regardless of the external circumstances that may arise. It is this mastery over our inner world that enables us to lead more fulfilling and purposeful lives. Suffering is an inescapable part of the human experience. It is something that touches everyone, whether through physical pain, emotional loss, or existential anguish. The idea of finding meaning in suffering may seem paradoxical, as suffering is often seen as something negative, something to be avoided or eliminated. Yet the question arises, can there be purpose in suffering? Can it hold significance beyond just the pain itself? The answer in many ways lies in how we choose to relate to suffering, how we interpret it, and how we decide to respond to it. At its core, suffering challenges us. It forces us to confront the limits of our power, to face the vulnerability that comes with being human. Suffering makes us aware of our fragility, our mortality, and our inability to control everything that happens in the world around us. It is often in these moments of deepest pain that we come face to face with the most profound truths about ourselves and the world. But these truths, although uncomfortable, can provide us with a unique kind of clarity. Through suffering, we can come to understand what truly matters, what we hold dear, and what we are willing to endure or sacrifice for. One of the central ideas in finding meaning in suffering is the notion that suffering is not necessarily something that can be eradicated, but something that can be transformed. It's not about avoiding pain, but about finding purpose within it. Pain itself might be unavoidable, but the way we frame it, the lens through which we view it, can change the experience. When we perceive suffering as a punishment or an unfair fate, it can feel purposeless, something to be endured without. But if we choose to see suffering as an opportunity for growth, transformation, or a pathway to greater empathy, then suffering takes on a deeper significance. Through suffering, we can develop resilience. It is in the crucible of hardship that the strength of the human spirit is often forged. Trials force us to dig deeper into ourselves, to find reserves of courage, patience, and perseverance that we may not have known we had. In these moments, we are faced with a choice. We can either allow suffering to break us, or we can allow it to mold us into stronger, more compassionate people. It is through overcoming suffering, or even simply enduring it with grace, that we can experience a deep sense of meaning and personal growth. Moreover, suffering can foster empathy. When we experience pain, we gain a deeper understanding of the suffering of others. It is easy to be indifferent to the struggles of others if we have never experienced hardship ourselves. But once we've been through pain, loss, or trauma, we develop a sense of shared humanity. Our own suffering can open our hearts to the pain of others, creating a bond that transcends differences and fosters compassion. In this way, suffering becomes a bridge connecting us to others in profound and meaningful ways. Another way to find meaning in suffering is by viewing it as part of a larger narrative. Often when we face difficulty, We can feel isolated as though we are the only ones who are suffering. But when we understand that suffering is a universal experience, that everyone at some point will face hardship, it becomes easier to put our pain in perspective. Suffering can become a part of the larger human story, one that unites us across time and space. The challenges we face and the way we respond to them become a testament to the strength of the human spirit and its capacity to endure. And in some cases, suffering brings with it a sense of profound clarity. It strips away the superficial and forces us to confront what truly matters in life. When we are in pain, we are often less concerned with material success, social status, or fleeting pleasures. Instead, we focus on the essentials, our relationships, our values, and the deeper meaning of life. In this way, suffering can serve as a catalyst for personal reflection, helping us reassess our priorities and redirect our lives toward what is truly important. Furthermore, suffering often leads to a greater appreciation for the good moments in life. After experiencing hardship, the simple joys of life, the warmth of a friendship, the beauty of a sunset, or the peace of solitude can become more deeply felt and appreciated. Suffering, in its way, amplifies the contrast between pain and joy, allowing us to experience life more fully, more intensely. This deeper appreciation can transform ordinary moments into profound ones, making us more present and grateful. Ultimately, meaning in suffering is not something that is given to us from the outside, but something that we must find for ourselves. It is a deeply personal journey, one that requires introspection, courage, and a willingness to engage with pain rather than run from it. By reframing suffering as a part of the human experience rather than as an obstacle to be avoided, we can begin to see it not just as something to endure, but as something that can enrich our lives and make us more whole. The responsibility of choice is one of the most profound aspects of human existence. It suggests that with the freedom to choose how we respond to situations, there also comes a deep responsibility to make those choices consciously and deliberately. His responsibility is not just about choosing actions in the moment, but also about taking ownership of our attitudes, beliefs, and reactions, all of which shape the course of our life. Every time we face a challenge, every time we encounter difficulty or joy, we are faced with a choice. This responsibility is not limited to our outward actions. It extends to our internal responses as well. It is easy to think of responsibility in terms of external behaviors, what we do, what we say, how we act toward others. However, true responsibility also includes our inner landscape, our thoughts, emotions, and attitude. When we recognize that we have the ability to choose our attitude, no matter, it's not enough to simply act in a way that reflects our values or desires. We must also ensure that our inner world aligns with those actions. The responsibility of choice also calls us to be aware of the consequences of our decisions. Every choice, no matter how small, has an impact not just on ourselves, but on those around us and the world at large. Our words, actions, and attitudes ripple out into the world, affecting others in ways we may not always see or understand. The responsibility of choice means being mindful of these effects and taking them into account when making. It is about choosing to act with awareness of the broader impact our choices might have on others, the environment, or even the future. One of the most challenging aspects of the responsibility of choice is accepting that we are ultimately the ones who are responsible for the outcomes of our decisions. In a world where we are often tempted to blame others or external circumstances for the challenges we face, it can be difficult to fully accept that we have the power to influence how we navigate life. However, taking full responsibility for our choices means acknowledging that while we may not control everything that happens to us, we always control how we respond to those things. It means acknowledging that we are not powerless in the face of adversity. This responsibility also extends to how we relate to others. It's easy to fall into patterns of blame and defensiveness when dealing with interpersonal conflict or challenging relationships. However, the responsibility of choice calls us to recognize that we have the ability to choose how we engage with others. We may not be able to control other people's actions, but we can choose how we respond. We can choose whether to react with anger, frustration, or understanding. We can choose to take responsibility for our part in a situation, to be open, and to approach conflict with compassion rather than defensiveness. Furthermore, the responsibility of choice invites us to examine our values and the decisions we make in light of them. It challenges us to ask ourselves whether our actions and decisions align with who we want to be as people. Are we living in a way that reflects our deeper beliefs, or are we making decisions, fear, or habit? This responsibility requires us to take a step back, reflect on the choices we make, and ensure it's about choosing to live authentically rather than reacting to life passively or by default. In addition, the responsibility of choice is closely linked to the concept of personal growth. As we navigate life, we are constantly faced with moments where we must decide how to move forward. Every decision is an opportunity for growth, whether it's a decision to face our fears, challenge our beliefs, or change a negative pattern of behavior. The responsibility of choice means acknowledging that our personal development is to a large extent determined by the choices we make. It's not just about choosing what we do, but about choosing who we are becoming through those choices. Taking responsibility for our choices also means accepting that mistakes are an inevitable part of life. No one can make perfect decisions all the time, and there will be times when we make choices that lead to regret or negative outcomes. However, the responsibility of choice is not about perfection. It's about owning our decisions, learning from them, and using them as stepping stones toward becoming better versions of ourselves. It is through taking responsibility for our mistakes that we grow and evolve, becoming more attuned to our values and more aware of the impact our choices have on the world. In this sense, the responsibility of choice is both empowering and humbling. It empowers us because it reminds us that we are not victims of our circumstances. We have the ability to shape our experience through our choices. At the same time, it humbles us because it reminds us that our choices make are. And with that comes the weight of responsibility. It means that we cannot simply float through life, reacting passively to whatever comes our way. We are called to engage with life consciously, to make choices that reflect who we are and who we want to be, and to accept the consequences of those choices, both good and bad. Awareness is one of the most transformative tools we possess as human beings. It is the ability to be conscious of what is happening around us as well as within us. In a world filled with distractions and noise, awareness offers a kind of clarity and presence that can dramatically change how we experience life. It goes beyond just being aware of external circumstances. It also involves recognizing and understanding our thoughts, emotions, and reactions in real. This inner awareness allows us to make more deliberate choices, rather than simply reacting impulsively to the events and challenges that arise. One of the key aspects of awareness is that it brings us into the present moment. Most of the time, our minds are either lost in the past, ruminating over things that have already happened, or in the future, worrying about what might happen next. This constant mental drift keeps us disconnected from the present moment and from the choices we have at any given time. Awareness pulls us back into the now, reminding us that this moment is the only one we truly have control over. When we are aware, we can fully engage with what is happening around us without being clouded by regret or anxiety. Awareness is also crucial in recognizing our automatic reactions. We all have conditioned responses to certain situations. Habits formed through years of experience, cultural influence, or past trauma. These automatic reactions often occur without conscious thought. For example, if we are faced with criticism, our knee-jerk response might be to defend ourselves or react with anger. This reactive mode of living can prevent us from responding. By developing awareness, we can begin to notice when we are falling into these automatic patterns and consciously choose a different response. Instead of reacting out of habit or emotion, we can respond with mindfulness, considering the situation more deeply and selecting a response. Another significant role of awareness is its connection to our internal world. Many times we are not fully conscious of the thoughts and emotions that drive our behavior. We might feel anxious or frustrated, but without awareness, we may not understand where those feelings are coming from. We might act out of fear or insecurity, but not be aware that these emotions are controlling us. Awareness allows us to identify these internal states and understand. By recognizing the emotions that arise within us, we can start to untangle their causes and decide how we want to navigate them, rather than allowing them to dictate our actions. Awareness also brings with it a sense of responsibility. When we are aware of our choices, actions, and feelings, we begin to realize that we have the power to influence our experience. This awareness transforms us from passive participants in our lives into active creators of our reality. This realization encourages us to be more deliberate in how we live, how we interact with others, and how we respond to challenges. Awareness empowers us to take responsibility for our experience, recognizing that while we cannot control everything that happens to us, we can always control how we engage with those circumstances. In addition, awareness is key to our ability to find meaning in life, especially in difficult times. When faced with hardship, it is easy to become consumed by the immediate pain and struggle. However, awareness allows us to step back and observe our situation from a broader perspective. By being aware of our thoughts and emotions, we can see that suffering, while painful, is not the entirety of the experience. We can become more attuned to the lessons that pain can offer, the personal growth that can arise from adversity, and the meaning that can be derived from even the most challenging circumstances. Awareness shifts our focus from the problem itself to the opportunity for growth within the problem. The role of awareness is also deeply tied to our relationships with others. Often our interactions are colored by unconscious judgments, assumptions, or past experiences. We may react to someone's behavior without fully understanding the reasons behind it, or we may project our own feelings onto others. When we bring awareness into our relationships, we begin to listen more deeply, not just to the words being spoken, but to the emotions and intentions behind them. Awareness helps us see people more clearly without the filters of our biases or insecurities, and allows us to respond with greater empathy and understanding. It can help us navigate conflicts with more openness and compassion, as we are better able to recognize and manage our own emotional responses and to consider the perspectives of others. Furthermore, awareness fosters a deeper connection to ourselves. It invites us to explore who we are, what we value, and what we truly want from life. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it is easy to get caught up in external demands and expectations, losing sight of our own needs and desires. Awareness provides the space to reflect on our goals, our dreams, and our sense of purpose. It allows us to tune into our inner voice and make choices that are more aligned with our true selves, rather than simply following external pressures or societal norms. Finally, awareness acts as a bridge between our inner and outer worlds. It allows us to see the connection between our thoughts, emotions, and external actions. By becoming more aware of the way we think and feel, we gain insight into the patterns that drive our behavior. This awareness can lead to positive change as we become more conscious of the choices we make and their effects on our life. It can also help us build a deeper sense of gratitude as we become more attuned to the beauty and richness of the present moment, the small joys of everyday life, and the deeper meaning that can be found in both ordinary and extraordinary experiences. Awareness is a dynamic and continuous process, one that evolves over time. It requires practice, patience, and a willingness to look deeply into ourselves and the world around us. However, the rewards of cultivating awareness are immense. It allows us to live with intention, to respond thoughtfully, and to experience life with a sense of clarity, purpose, and connection. Personal freedom is the inherent right and capacity to act according to one's own will without undue restraint or coercion from external forces. It is often seen as a foundational concept in both philosophy and human rights, representing the ability to make choices, express individuality, and determine one's path in life. However, personal freedom is not merely about the absence of restrictions or the ability to do whatever one desires. True personal freedom is deeply tied to internal ability to choose one's responses, attitudes, and actions, regardless of the external circumstances. At the heart of personal freedom is the idea of self-determination, the ability to decide for oneself what kind of life one wants to lead, what values to embrace, and how to respond to challenges and adversity. This kind of freedom is not about acting without consequences, but about acting in alignment with one's values and purpose. In other words, no matter what happens to us, we retain the freedom to choose how we engage with the world and how we interpret those events. Personal freedom requires an understanding of the relationship between external forces and internal autonomy. The external world, society, culture, family, law, and other people places certain expectations and boundaries upon us. These can be seen as restrictions on our freedom, limiting what we can do, where we can go, and how we can behave. While we may be bound by laws or social norms, we still have the freedom to decide how we approach and respond to them. For example, we might not have the freedom to act in any way we please without facing legal consequences, but we always have the freedom to choose our attitude toward those laws or norms, to interpret them through our own values, and to find ways to act within them that align with our sense of self. The true essence of personal freedom lies in the realization that even when our external environment is restrictive or challenging, we can still exercise freedom within our inner world. This is the freedom to choose our thoughts, beliefs, and emotional responses. While we may not be able to control what happens to us or how others treat us, we always have the power to choose how we will react and how we will think about our circumstances. This inner freedom allows us to navigate life's challenges with resilience, purpose, and dignity, regardless of external limitation. In this sense, personal freedom is inseparable from responsibility. Freedom is not a state of total autonomy in which we can do anything without consequence. Rather, true personal freedom is about understanding that our choices have an impact on ourselves and others. The more aware we are of our personal freedom, the more we recognize the responsibility that comes with it. We must take ownership of our choices and accept that while we are free to act as we wish, we are also responsible for the consequences of those actions. This responsibility requires self-awareness, reflection, and a deep understanding of how our actions affect not only ourselves, but the people around us and the world we inhabit. Furthermore, personal freedom requires self-mastery. It is not simply the ability to act on impulse, or to give in to every desire that arises. True freedom involves the power to choose which impulses, desires, and actions are worthy of pursuit. It requires the ability to discern between short-term gratification and long-term fulfillment, between reactive behavior and thoughtful, deliberate action. Self-mastery is the process of cultivating discipline and making choices that reflect our deepest values and aspirations rather than being driven by momentary emotions or external pressures. One important aspect of personal freedom is the liberation from internal constraints, such as limiting beliefs, self-doubt, and fears. Often we experience the most significant barriers to freedom, not from the outside world, but from our own minds. We may hold beliefs that limit our potential, such as the fear of failure, the belief that we are not worthy, or the assumption that certain things are simply not possible for us. These internal constraints can imprison us more effectively than any external force, preventing us from acting freely and fully. Overcoming these internal limitations is a key aspect of reclaiming personal freedom. When we free ourselves from self-imposed constraints, we open up the possibility of living a life that is more authentic, more in line with our true self. Personal freedom is also intimately connected to the idea of choice. Freedom is not just the absence of restrictions, but the presence of options. It is the ability to make decisions and to shape one's life based on those decisions. When we feel that we have no choices, that we are stuck or trapped, we experience a profound sense of powerlessness. But the reality is that even in the most challenging situations, we often have choices, whether in our attitudes, our responses, or our perspectives. Embracing personal freedom means recognizing that even when circumstances seem limiting, we still have the power to choose how we engage with them, how we interpret them, and how we move forward. In this way, personal freedom is not just a matter of external conditions. It is a way of being. It is a mindset, a perspective that allows us to navigate life's ups and downs with a sense of agency and purpose. It is the ability to live authentically, according to our own values and desires, rather than simply conforming to the expectations of others or the constraints of society. When we claim our personal freedom, we take responsibility for our choices and understand that our thoughts, actions, and attitudes are within our control. This understanding empowers us to create a life that reflects who we truly are, not who we are told we should be. Personal freedom also involves the capacity to make decisions that align with our deeper sense of meaning. True freedom is not just about having the ability to choose whatever we want at any given time, but about making choices that contribute to our growth, well-being, and fulfillment. It is about choosing a life that reflects our core values, our sense of purpose, and our deepest aspirations. In this sense, personal freedom is not just about doing what we want in the moment, but about living a life that is meaningful and authentic, one that is aligned with who we truly are at our core. Imagine standing at a crossroads, where every step you take has the potential to shape your future. You face the vast unknown filled with challenges, but also endless possibilities. The question is, do you let life push you along its path, or do you seize the reins and define your journey? The concept of personal freedom is not just about making choices, it's about the power you hold within yourself to shape your life, to break free from internal constraints, and to take full responsibility for the way you experience the world. How much of your life is truly yours to control? The answer lies in the choices you make and the freedom you claim in making them.